Hi guys, welcome to another lesson with teacher Gia, and today we are going to tackle some of the biology questions on the muscular system. So that is what you're doing today. So our first question is, which of the following is unique to the muscles of facial expression? They all originate from the scalp musculature. They insert onto the cartilage found around the face. They only insert onto the facial bones. And D, they insert into the skin. The correct answer is they insert into the skin. Muscles of facial expression are unique because they often insert into the skin rather than attaching to bones, which allows them to move the skin and create facial expressions such as smiling, frowning, and raising eyebrows. This characteristic distinguishes them from most other skeletal muscles, which typically insert onto bones. Which of the following helps an agonist work? A synergist, B, a fixator, C, an insertion, and D, an antagonist. So if you don't know about an agonist, antagonist, synergist, fixator, check my previous video. I'll put links of the videos in the description. So here the answer is a synergist. A synergist is a muscle that assists the agonist, the primary muscle responsible for a movement, by providing additional force or by reducing unnecessary movement. This helps the agonist work more efficiently. So that is a synergist, our answer. About a fixator stabilizes the origin of the agonist to allow smooth movement but does not directly assist in the action. So a fixator mostly helps with the origin of the agonist, like on the shoulders during forearm movement towards the shoulder. Yes. And an insertion is the attachment point of a muscle on the moving bone. An antagonist opposes the agonist, providing balance and control to the movement. I hope that is well understood. Which one of the following statements is correct about what happens during flexion? A, the angle between bones is increased. B, the angle between bones is decreased. C, the bone moves away from the body. D, the bone moves towards the center of the body. The correct answer is the angle between bones is decreased. During flexion, the angle between two bones is decreased, bringing them closer together. This movement typically occurs in the sagittal plane, as seen when bending the elbow or knee. Again, the angle between bones is increased. This describes extension, which is the opposite of flexion. During extension, the angle between two bones increases, moving them further apart. For example, when you straighten your arm at the elbow, the angle between the upper arm and forearm increases. Choice C is the bone moves away from the body. This describes abduction. Abduction is the movement of a limb or bone away from the midline or center of the body. An example is lifting your arm or leg sideways away from the body. Choice D was the bone moves towards the center of the body. This describes adduction. Adduction is the movement of a limb or bone towards the midline of the body. For example, bringing your arm down to your side from a raised position or moving your legs together after spreading them apart. So that is all about explanation to this question. Which is moved the least during muscle contraction? The origin, the insertion, the ligaments, the joints. The correct answer is the origin. During muscle contraction, the origin is the point where the muscle attaches to a more stable or less movable bone, meaning it moves the least. Choice B was the insertion. The insertion is attached to the bone that moves more during contraction, pulling towards the origin. Ligaments connect bones to each other at joints and generally provide stability but are not directly involved in muscle contraction. Joints are structures where the bones meet and they allow for movement, but they are not the direct focus of muscle contraction in terms of movement degree. They serve as pivot points for movement. So the best answer for this question is the origin. Which muscle has a convergent pattern of fascicles? Choice A, biceps brachii, B, gluteus maximus, C, pectoralis major, and D, rectus femoris. The correct answer is pectoralis major. The pectoralis major has a convergent pattern of fascicles where the muscle fibers spread out widely at the origin across the chest and then converge to a single point at the insertion on the humerus. This arrangement allows for a versatile range of motion. Here is a brief explanation of the other options. Biceps brachii. This muscle has a parallel or fusiform arrangement with fibers running parallel to each other along the length of the muscle. Gluteus maximus. This muscle has a quadrilateral or fan-shaped arrangement, but it doesn't fully converge like a pectoralis major. Rectus femoris. This muscle has a bipennate pattern where fascicles attached at an angle on both sides of a central tendon, resembling a feather-like structure. Convergent muscles like the pectoralis major allow for strong versatile contractions by focusing the force from a broad area into a single insertion point. So that is all. And our answer here is pectoralis major. A muscle that has a pattern of fascicles running along the long axis of the muscle has which of the following fascicle arrangements? We have circular, pennate, parallel, and rectus. So the correct answer is parallel. In a parallel fascicle arrangement, the muscle fibers run along the long axis of the muscle. This arrangement allows the muscle to contract over a great distance and is common in muscles that enable extensive movement, such as the sartorius in the thigh. So here's a brief explanation of the other options. We have circular. In a circular arrangement, fascicles are arranged in concentric rings. This type of arrangement is found in sphincter muscles like the orbicularis oris around the mouth. Have pennate. In a pennate arrangement, fascicles attach obliquely to a central tendon, giving a feather-like appearance. This arrangement is seen in muscles like the rectus femoris, bipennate, and the deltoid multipennate. Pennate muscles are typically designed for strength over range of motion. Rectus. While rectus means straight, it's not a fascicle arrangement type. Instead, it refers to the orientation of certain muscles such as the rectus abdominis, where fibers run vertically or straight along the body. These muscles typically have a parallel arrangement. So our answer was parallel. Which arrangement best describes a bipennate muscle? A. The muscle fibers feed in on an angle to a long tendon from both sides. The muscle fibers feed in on an angle to a long tendon from all directions. The muscle fibers feed in on an angle to a long tendon from one side. The muscle fibers on one side of a tendon feed into it at an certain angle, and muscle fibers on the other side of the tendon feed into it at the opposite angle. So our question is, which arrangement best describes a bipennate muscle? The correct answer is the muscle fibers feed in on an angle to a long tendon from both sides. We had talked about unipennate, bipennate, and multipennate in a previous video. I'll put a link in the description. So that is a description of a bipennate, where the muscle fibers feed in on an angle to a long tendon from both sides. In a bipennate muscle, fibers are arranged on an angle on both sides of a central tendon, resembling a feather structure. This arrangement allows for greater strength due to a higher density of muscle fibers in a given area. So that is our answer. Here is a brief explanation of the other options. The muscle fibers feed in on an angle to a long tendon from all sides. This describes a multipennate muscle, where fibers attach to multiple tendons as seen in the deltoid muscles. So choice C, the muscle fibers feed in on an angle to a long tendon from one side. This describes a unipennate muscle, where the fibers attach obliquely to only one side of the tendon, as seen in the extensor digitorum longus. Choice D, the muscle fibers on one side of a tendon feed into it at a certain angle, and muscle fibers on the other side of the tendon feed into it at the opposite angle. This description doesn't correspond to a typically pennate arrangement, so choice D is automatically out. So our answer is choice A, which is the muscle fibers feed in on an angle to a long tendon from both sides. That is a bipennate muscle arrangement. So that is it. The location of a muscle's insertion and origin can determine A, action, B, the force of contraction, C, muscle name, D, the load a muscle can carry. So here we have muscles insertion and origin. Let's describe what an origin is. It is the fixed attachment of a muscle to a bone that remains immobile during an action. Insertion is the attachment of a muscle to a bone that moves during an action. I hope you understand the difference between the two. So about an action, it is a particular movement of a muscle which can be described relative to the joint or body part moved. When a muscle contracts, it pulls the insertion towards the origin, creating movement at the joint in a specific direction. So our answer is the location of a muscle's origin and insertion can determine a muscle's action. Okay? So here's an explanation of the other options. The force of contraction. The force of contraction is influenced by factors like muscle fiber arrangement, e.g. pennate versus parallel, and the cross-sectional area of the muscle rather than a specific location of the origin and insertion. Choice C, we have muscle name. Muscle names often describe location, shape, size, or function, but they are not determined by the exact locations of the origin and insertion. Choice D, the load a muscle can carry. The load a muscle can carry is determined by factors like muscle size, fiber arrangement, and leverage, not by the location of the origin and insertion. I hope that is understood. So our answer is action. Which muscle name does not make sense? A, extensor digitorum, B, gluteus minimus, C, biceps femoris, and D, extensor minimus longus. When you just look at this question, you can see choice D, extensor. Minimus means like something that is minimum or small. Longus is something that is long, so it definitely does not make sense. So the correct answer is extensor minimus longus. It is a muscle name that does not make sense. This name doesn't make sense because minimus and longus contradict each other. Minimus means smallest and or shortest, while longus means long. Muscle names typically use one or the other to describe size or length, not both simultaneously. Here's why the other options make sense. Extensor digitorum. This name indicates a muscle that extends the fingers or toes. Digitorum refers to digits, like fingers and toes. Gluteus minimus. This name describes a smaller muscle in the gluteal region, consistent with its size relative to other gluteal muscles like gluteus maximus and gluteus medius, so it makes sense. Biceps femoris. This name describes a two-headed muscle, which are biceps, located in the femoral thigh region, part of the hamstrings. So our answer, which muscle's name does not make sense, is extensor minimus longus.